Hi everybody and welcome back, and today we introduce the concept of variables, and specifically we're going to show you how to implement an object variable in a VBA program embedded in an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, let's start off and introduce this concept of variables. What are they? Why do you need them? How do you use them? So in computer programming, you're always thinking about three things: input, process, output. So there's always some sort of information getting asked, and then you have to remember it. So when you remember this stuff, it has to go into memory cells. So variables are kind of a way to represent the locations, the names of these memory cells. So indulge me here as I doodle on your screen here with my little marker. So imagine a memory cell in the computer, okay? And we're going to give it a name. So if it's to keep track of people's marks, maybe you'll name that particular variable Mark, okay? And we'll put numbers like 70 in there. Now, memory cells can hold other stuff. They can hold people's names, okay? So we might call this memory cell actually name, right? And another thing the memory cells can hold is stuff we just did, objects, okay? Objects being maybe a particular actual cell on a spreadsheet. And that's a different kind of variable declaration, so to speak. So what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes is show you how you actually formally declare, hey, I'm going to have a variable cell that holds numbers, for instance. I'm going to have a variable cell that holds words, for instance. And I'm going to have a variable cell that holds objects, which is kind of a weird one, right? And that's why I want to dovetail on what we did last lecture and throw in this object variable and show you a simple application of it. Now let's get into real specifics and show you the actual commands. Go to your developer ribbon and press Visual Basic. So you should have this appear. And we'll just double click on this workbook to have a little screen appear, a little place where we're going to type in a few commands. So you'll notice here it says General Declarations. So this is one of the places where you can tell the whole world, or in our case Excel, that listen, get ready, I'm going to type in some words, or I'm going to type in some numbers, and I want you to remember them. So let's start off with words. Let's say I'm going to formally declare to the entire world that I'm going to type in some words, okay, maybe some titles or whatever. So you would say this word dim, then you would make up a name for your variable, and then you would say the word as, and then you could say, well, what do you want this title to be remembered as? And it's going to be a string, okay, and should be in capitals. So I'll type it in capitals, and then you press enter, okay? So there's our first declaration to the world. Listen, get ready, put a box called title, get it ready to accept words. Okay, let's get it ready to accept numbers. So I'll say dim row number, for instance, could be a number, right? As so row numbers are like 1, 2, 3. So in math we call those integers. All right, so there's our second declaration. Okay, so we're through with the formal introductions. We've got these nice memory cells named, but there's nothing in them. So the next step is what are called assignment statements, where you actually put information in there. And this is what's called an assignment statement. The left-hand side stores the variable name, then you have an equal sign, and then you put whatever you want in there. Now, title holds a word, so you have to put a word in there. And we can put down electronics if you're doing some spreadsheet for an electronics store. That's an assignment statement. That'll remember now in that little memory box the word electronics. Next up is row number. Okay, so again, you always put on the left-hand side the assignment statement, the actual variable, and then equal to, well, row numbers are numbers. So I'm just going to put 1. All right, so remembers the number 1. Okay, now the tricky one, the object variable. Object variables are a lot more complicated than these simple words and numbers, but they're not that tricky, okay? You still use the word dim to say, hey, get ready, something's coming. Let's type in the word dependence and as a range. Now what that means is I'm going to be after a cell, okay, on my spreadsheet. Now that just says get ready. I'm going to put a cell location in your memory, an object. But to get to that object, it's trickier. Do you remember that last lecture where you have to write down that long thing to get to a particular spot? That's what we got to do next. Now there is kind of an assignment statement for objects, but you can't just write down the variable equals. You have to start it off with a word called set. then you write down your variable, which is right above us as we type, equal to, and now remember that long stuff, so work, books, and then bracket, and you have to give it a name, obviously. I'm just going to cheat and use the shortcut way, a 1, and then work, sheets, bracket, and I'll cheat again, 1. Then this is the part you have to be very specific, okay? So let's say I was after A5 in my cells, okay? That is how you would store whatever is in that cell into dependence, or actually remember at least the location of that cell. Okay, so what you have to realize now is after this assignment statement is made, this set statement, you can use the dependence variable as if it were the actual object, okay? So you don't have to write down that big long thing anymore. This includes modifying its properties and using its methods. So for example, you could change the value stored in cell A5 with the following statement. So I'm just going to write down dependence now. So instead of that big long thing, I'm going to write down dependence dot value equals, and then type in a 3. So there you have a little introduction to the concept of variables, having the computer remember stuff, the concept of assignment statements, having the computer put things in those memory cells that we've declared as strings, integers, and objects, okay? So now I've left you kind of hanging, like, so what? You got them in there, what do you do with them? Well, we're going to do now a little application where we implement some of this and make it do something like maybe work out row totals or column totals, shift things down, all kinds of neat things that you can do to a spreadsheet. So let me show you the final product first, and then of course we'll backtrack and start it from scratch. But I want to show you what we're trying to achieve with this knowledge now of object variables. And I'll hover over the algorithm so you can see what we're going to try to do. So we're going to try to shift the row 1 down a couple, okay? And when I shift it down, I want to write in the first little cell there, A1, the title Paradise Electronics. And then what I want to do with everything shifted down now is at B13 all the way to D13, I want to add up those totals for January, February, and March. And then even on top of that, I want to do almost like a print preview of the worksheet where we can actually print it out. All right, kind of neat, right? So that's our final sort of result. And actually, let me just show it to you. And I've made 2 buttons, kind of a dull one, kind of a fancy one. When I press it, watch what happens to the spreadsheet. Oh, isn't that cool? We've gone into print preview. I'm going to close it. I'm not going to actually print it. But look at now, we've got Paradise Electronics at the top. We've shifted down a couple of rows so it would fit in. And there is our result. Now, you might be saying, hey, I could do this just by recording. Why are you even programming it? Well, for 2 reasons. We want to learn how to program, obviously. And because when you do record it, it writes messy code. Actually, I'll show you for a second a simple recording and kind of the garbage it puts in there. And then I'll show you our clean code. Okay, here's a little spreadsheet I just put up really quickly. It's got some words, it's got some numbers, and what I'm going to do is tape record it and show you what appears in the code. Don't laugh with that tape record comment. Okay, so we're going to go to developer and we're going to press record macro, and we'll just call it test, and we'll press OK. So we're live now. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to insert, and actually I'll do it again because we want to do it twice. Okay, so that's done. Next thing I want to do is I want to put myself here, and I'll start typing in some bracket, and I'll highlight all of this, and then another bracket, and press enter. And actually I'm going to stop right there. All right, and I just want to see, just for fun, what exactly the code was that the computer put in. All right, and there's several ways to do it. You can press macro and press edit. That'll bring us into this world. Okay, you can also go straight to Visual Basic and you'll go into that world too. So here is what got saved by the macro, and this is the kind of stuff we're going to type in by hand, but it's going to be a lot cleaner than this because I have no idea what's going on here, to tell you the truth. I haven't seen these commands before, and I use VB all the time, so I just don't like this. There's a cleaner way to do what we're going to do here, but that is, you know, you could resort to that if you wanted to, and if you didn't know anything about VB, just wanted to do it on blind faith, you would just trust VBA to be stored here and let the macro do its own thing. But I want us to learn it the real programming way. But anyway, that's kind of like the garbagey stuff that's appearing when we record this macro because, you know, Microsoft does it in their own special way. We're going to do it our way. Okay, before we get rolling, I'd like you to load in from today's resources the file called sales, not the one that's called sales VBA. That's the answer, obviously. And then I'll get it set up to do our actual coding. All right, we'll press the developers tag, and then we'll go to Visual Basic. Okay, and remember we always have to add a module. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a sub-procedure. Remember, there's function procedures and sub-procedures. So this procedure we're going to create, we'll call it format worksheet or something like that. So we'll type in the word public sub, and we're going to call it format worksheet, and then the bracket, and when we press enter, it nicely puts in the end sub for us. Now you're saying, well, didn't you put stuff in the general? Yes, we did. You can declare variables in the general section or right in the sub procedure. We're going to do it there for now. There is a difference, which we'll talk about later as we get more sophisticated with our programming knowledge. Now remember, whenever you do a program, you need to declare your variables, okay? And I'm going to start doing this for you guys. I'm going to write these things called comments so that when you look back on these, you can read them. The computer processor does not actually look at these. These are for you, the programmer, to look back on to see what you were thinking about at that moment when you were typing them in. So you'll see them turn green. So this first section here, what we're going to do is we're going to dim the title as a string. And if you get lazy, hopefully it fixes it for you. See how it put it in capitals for me? I'm also going to dim the row number. So these look familiar, right? Because we did them a few minutes ago. And then I'm going to assign the contents to them. So for the title, I'm going to type in Paradise Electronics. And for the row number, we're going to start at row 1 and we're going to shift it down in a few seconds. Next up is that object declaration, which is a bit trickier. And again, I'm going to write a comment here. So we're going to declare the object variables. It could be more than one sometimes. For now, we'll say it's just one, and we're going to assign it its address. And just to remember, I'll write this down too. There's other data types. I think there's workbook. So we're not going to use workbook right now, but there's workbook could be a type. And the last one I did with you guys was range. And you're saying, well, aren't you going to use that one for this one? No, I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to use worksheet. So I'm going to say dim sheet. What should I call it? First quarter, I guess we'll say. As a worksheet. Okay, and you'll see how once I know that worksheet, I can say dot something and get to different parts of the worksheet. So that's how you declare it. Remember, how do you put stuff in it? You have to say that word set, and then again, sheet, first quarter, and then equals, and then we got to type in that big long thing, application, dot, work, books. And I'll be kind of lazy. I'll use that one. I love using that. It saves me having to type. And then work sheets. And again, we'll use a 1. And now we do our real programming. So I'll actually say that. Now the real VBA programming. Let's do the first part. Like, you know how you shift down the column or the rows a couple down? So another comment. So I'm going to say we're going to insert 2 rows above row 1. Okay, and here's how you do it, nice and clean. So remember, our worksheet now had that big long thing to it, but it's actually called sheet first Q. So that's what I'm going to type in first, sheet first Q, and then dot rows bracket, and it's the first one, right? But I want to use this variable. You know, that's the whole point of being very organized when you program. You've stored the number 1 into row number, so why not use the word row number? Okay, dot, and we have to insert. So we're going to type in the word insert. There's a nice clean way to insert. I don't know if you remember that when I recorded, it was kind of a big, long, ugly thing. Nice and clean. That's why we program. So let's do it again. And again, we'll be at row 1, and we'll just shift it down again. And there'll be like now 2 spaces. And there's our row shifting. Okay, so now we got 2 blank lines at the top. Why don't we throw in that title now? So again, sheet, first quarter, dot, range. Remember that word from before. And we're going to make it point exactly to A1. And then how do you put something in there? Well, we want to change the value of it. It's probably empty right now, so we're going to say value, and actually I'll type it in small letters, value equals, and I want to put that big long name, Paradise Electronics, but you don't write Paradise Electronics. Remember, Paradise Electronics is now in a variable called title, so use it. Use the power of programming. Okay, next up, the column totals. Okay, and what we're going to do there is use a couple of commands to sum those numbers, right? So again, our sheet is called sheet first quarter, and then we're going to say dot range, just like we did above, because we want to put the answer, well, the first one we wanted at B13. So we'll type in quotes B13, and then dot. Now we're going to put a formula there, not an actual number, right? And the formula is going to be equal to, when we put this in quotes, sum, and then bracket B4 to B12, okay? And then bracket and another quote. We're going to do that 3 times. Now, through the magic of video editing, I copy and pasted the first one and then changed the B to C and then the C to D, and now we've got our 3 formal formulas for the column totals. All right, we're in the home stretch. Now we're going to do the print preview of the worksheet. Okay, and we'll type in sheet first quarter dot, and if you went through all of these, you would see the one you're looking for, right? I'm looking for print preview, so it's we're down here somewhere. There it is right there, print preview. Okay, you can type it in that way, click on it, whatever you want to do. And that is the end of our program, but it's got quite a bit of stuff there, all right? Notice now it's all by hand, nice and clean, no ugly looking commands, fairly clean and crisp solution. Let's give it a try and see if it works. Now there are several ways to play back a macro. I'm going to show you 3 techniques. The first one obviously is just go to macro, and there's the name of our macro, and press run. Oh, there's print preview, that's a good sign. Let's go back, and it was shifted down 2 rows. It's worked out the column totals. Everything looks good. Here's a second technique, which is I think a lot cooler than just going up here. While we're in the developer tools, let's go to insert and press this one right here. That's a button form. Now it's going to ask you to draw a button somewhere, so I'm going to draw it right in here. And I'm going to let go. As soon as I let go, it says, okay, what do you want to connect this button to? Well, we've only got one choice. There's our sort of VBA-inspired macro, and we'll press OK. And now it's a button. Now you can go in here now and change it to play or whatever you want to type in. When you click away from it and you go over it, it turns to a finger. I bet you this is going to shift it down 2 more. We'll have some fun with this. Okay, there it is again. And now you've shifted it down twice. We've probably wrecked what we were trying to do, but you see the point of it. What if you want to edit this after you've done this? All you do is you right click, and then you can reassign the macro, go in here and change the name, whatever you want to do. You want a prettier version of this? That's kind of a dull gray button. Let's go to the Insert tab. Let's go to Shapes. Let's grab a rectangular shape, and we'll draw it over here. That's not that great looking either, but now we've got different styles, and let's see what our choices are. Oh, there's some colored ones. I like that. Okay, so you can add some color to it. You can actually start typing in there. Play again. Oh, that's in white. I guess I could shift that over a bit. Okay, and there's a button, but it doesn't do anything yet. So you got to put some intelligence to it. So we go to Assign Macro. Oh, there's our choice. Press OK. And now you've got a more colorful, and there's other things you can do to it, obviously, and it will play the macro again. We've really destroyed this one now, but you can see the 2 different ways to execute it via buttons or your own little shapes. So there you have it. Our first real meat and potato kind of example where we get in there, declare variables, object variables, use them in commands, and create an actual macro for this particular spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with some problems to try. Now in the resources for today's lecture, I've given you a problem sheet to work on, and each one of them refers to some files, and each file also has a solution. Okay, so you can give them a try, and then you can check the solution if you didn't get it. Here is the actual problem sheet. Okay, so nice little problems, emphasizing most of the ideas that I taught you today. Give them a try. The solutions are freely available to you, and hope you get something out of them as we go deeper and deeper into this VBA programming. Thanks for listening. Take care. See you in the next lecture.